Welcome to the Two Gurus Talk Compliance podcast with me, Kristy Grant-Hart. I'm here with the one and only Tom Fox. This week, we're covering the state of the job market for compliance professionals. What happens when the board and CEO seriously disagree on business strategy? A CEO learns that burnout culture is not good for business. And Florida man's incredible antics that landed him 120 illegally obtained flights. But first, Tom, how has your week been, and what do you think is the most interesting development?
Well, I teach in the summer at Case Western Law School, and this week is grading week. So I'm experiencing the professorial joys of grading essay exams that I have written for students.
Nobody ever likes to grade. It's horrible. Congratulations. I did 3 years as a law professor, and I'm telling you, that was plenty.
Yep. So anyway, it's as always, it's been an experience, and some of the people who never said a thing during class are just killing it on the exams.
Okay.
And it's always surprises me to see who really shines as opposed to who, participating in class, asks a lot of questions, etc. So.
Awesome. Well, where do you want to start this week?
Well, I wanted to start with our good friend, the corporate CEO of the world, Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump has basically staked out a position that he's not the boss of CEOs. He is the CEO, and he's going to be the CEO of the world. And he did this by telling Intel they had to fire their CEO. And so that led to a lot of commentary, and not that I don't want to focus on the political ramifications of this, but I think from the business perspective and legal and compliance perspective, this could have huge implications, Kristy. Whether or not you believe that the president is corrupt or his administration engages in corruption, well, if he tells a company to do something and we're going to investigate, enforce, tariff, slap a lawsuit on you, name and shame you, or just go, nah. Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it if it's against your core values? You're going to do it if it's illegal? You're going to do it if it's unethical? Can you say to NVIDIA, oh, by the way, you want to do business with China, you have to give me 15%. And by me, I mean the U.S. government. He can apparently do all of that. And so what happens when a company such as Disney, let's maybe go to your part of the world, although I'm focusing on Walt Disney World, what happens when they say it is important to us that we have a diverse workforce, including LGBTQ and all others? And the president says, oh, no, I don't like that. In fact, I'm going to go in front of the entity and be the MC for the next Medal of Honor or Medal of Freedom winners. So I just think it opens up a level of risk and uncertainty in business that who knows where it'll go and how far down he will say he wants changes in a corporation. And what happens when a corporation makes a change and the shareholder loses money or someone doesn't like it or it's illegal or unethical?
Yeah, so Tom, the Wall Street Journal article that you chose as the basis for this conversation was really interesting because I obviously have read about what was happening in Intel, but they gave many more examples of places where the president has essentially ordered businesses to make choices that he would prefer, especially when it comes relating to things like tariffs with Apple. I do think that this is really tricky, right? How do you do a risk assessment on this? And do you do a risk assessment? What role is the CCO supposed to play here with the board? What do you think from our perspective, from our C&E perspective, compliance and ethics, what is the responsible way of trying to manage this in our corporations?
Well, you've hit it exactly on the head. What's the risk? And how do you assess that risk? And how do you put in a risk management strategy based upon that risk? I wanted to pair the article, the first article, this Wall Street Journal article, with the articles about him telling Intel to fire their CEO. And so we have that specific instance. Now he's backed off on that because, of course, he's the Taco Don. But how are you going to manage that risk? Are you going to push back? Are you going to quietly lobby? Are you going to make a major campaign donation? Or are you going to buy some stock in Trump's social media company? What are you going to do if that happens? And how are you going to try to reframe the issue so that it is less than a 24-hour cycle? You're going to have to be ready for that. And I think you have hit it exactly on the head within the framework of what we talk about with our clients is what's the risk? And if the risk is going to be on you, how are you going to respond? And you have to be ready to respond, and you need to be prepared by having the risk assessment done, the risk management strategy in place, maybe some tabletop exercises even, but you can't be caught off guard, and you have to be ready to literally respond at a moment's notice.
Tricky times. We can also talk about the tricky times as in our profession. I want to turn to our very smart friend and fan of the podcast. Hello, Matt Kelly. I know you listen from Radical Compliance. So he's posting frequently about jobs, hiring, and trends in the profession. So if you're not following his blog, go do that. But this week, he checked in to talk about his thoughts on the compliance job market. So the hot take from the first paragraph is where he says, quote, "The market is still a big, roiling mess of uncertainty that's driving everyone bananas," unquote, which I thought was a fantastic sentence. The first challenge is finding good data. So Matt points out that the definition of compliance professional isn't very easy to pin down. He did try to use the Bureau of Labor Statistics that has an estimation showing a 5.4% growth in compliance professionals between 2023 and 2030. Not terrible. He then talks about the horrors of the modern hiring process and having lots of friends going through this. And with, when we're hiring, it is tricky, especially in bigger companies. The things that are supposed to make our lives easier and hire more quickly have created such a bloat that it can take months to even get through interviews. And he also noted that while AI can craft resumes and cover letters, unfortunately, they can make every applicant look perfect, which makes it even harder to find the real gems. So he closes out his article on a high note, which is that even in our light enforcement environment in which we find ourselves, that he feels hopeful that companies needing compliance skills will always be in demand. So if we train people effectively, operationalize legal requirements, assess, mitigate risk, and respond to the speak up complaints, we will always be important. So I want to shout amen to the rooftops about the craziness of the hiring process, certainly where my friends are dealing with it. And also the complexity and sheer amount of time wasted by companies while candidates just basically sit and stew. So besides that, off my soapbox now, what did you think of Matt's take on the compliance job market, Tom?
So as you might guess, I get lots of emails, calls, tweets, LinkedIn's, DMs on this topic.
They're sliding into your DMs, Tom? Is that what they're doing?
Yep. And I tell everyone the first thing is this is going to be a minimum 6-month, but probably a 12-month process. Mm-hmm. So don't think you're going to get something quick. It just doesn't happen anymore. Now, the flip side to that is companies need to invest time to get the right person, and that takes time.
That's fair.
So I don't begrudge that. Some of the horror stories we have both heard are just that. People with 6-7 interviews with one company and then put on hold, and you never hear. So that part is frustrating, but that's just the nature of the beast. So I tell people, prepare yourself for this eventuality, number one. Number two, now is the time for you to do something for you, whatever that is. So when that happened to me, the last time it happened, I had always wanted to watch great silent movies, D.W. Griffith's. So I went and bought every DVD I could find of the great silent classics, and I did that. I had a friend who was obsessed with Gilligan's Island, and she wanted to watch Gilligan's Island straight through, and she did, because in her life, she had gone to work. She had started a family. She had continued work, continued to raise her family, and had never had time for her. She had a few minutes, obviously, here and there, but take some time for you and do whatever that is that you've never had the chance to do. If you want to go work on yourself, go work on yourself. If you want to do something the world thinks stupid, go do something the world thinks stupid if that's what you want to do. But do something for you that you can do now and just revel in that for a few moments. So those are the top two things I tell people. Then when we get down to, let's look at your social media presence. And what is your social media presence? And I always invite them on a podcast so that I can provide them with social media sharing assets. And I get them on LinkedIn and I explain, engage. Take whatever you talk about with me, put together a LinkedIn post or something, do a short video, do a series of short videos. You can do them on your phone and post on LinkedIn. Get your name out in the social engagement of social media so that people are thinking about you. Start calling your friends, all your friends, and just find out what's out there. And then you're gonna have to go through that process at some point. But I really help people to understand, I think you have more ability now to get your name out than you ever did in the past. Now, people like you and me have been in front of the public eye, or at least the compliance public eye, for a long time. And we both have lots of friends who have done this. And, we could probably each name 25. And those people are going to be more well known. And so, unfortunately, the time to start on social media is 20 years ago, or when's the second best time today. So get out there and put your name out there and just see what might be available. But you are only limited by your own imagination. So do something for you, get on social media, and then start exploring. And it's going to take some period of time. And I would say that's been my advice, probably even pre-pandemic, so maybe even 10 years. And that's what I've seen in this market. I think, Matt, the service he provides is great because he has a curated list every week of hiring, and you should definitely be looking at that. But there are some specific headhunters in the compliance space that do very, very good. I worked with a guy years ago named Maurice Gilbert, and he ended up selling his company, but he focused on compliance. And I think there's a couple of other firms that have a compliance component. Get in touch with them, get your resume together, work with them on what you want. Don't take the first job. And just, you're going to have to go through a lengthy, frustrating process. But take some time and take care of you, whoever you are, and whatever that means. Take some time for you, because you may not have time till you're 60 or 65 or even older, again, to watch every Gilligan's Island.
Wow, fantastic, Tom. I love all of that. You should take that whole AI thing and make it into an article, just what, transcribing what you just said. Do take the first job if it's a great one, but not if you're not out of desperation. And I was just thinking as you were talking, I started working full time at the age of 21. I have never had more than about 2 days off between that. So I'm not going to name exactly how many years that is, but it's a lot. So I think that your advice is spot on there. Let's move over to, we're going to kind of circle back here. There's another thing about Intel that you wanted to talk about. What is going on here?
Well, actually, the part about the CEO, I started to talk about that in the context of Trump. But when I looked at it, the CEO of Intel owns stock in companies where other shareholders are the Chinese military. And I think that's a problem. I think if you're going to own stock in companies that the United States has on a sanctioned list, that's a problem. And I think that's a potential, not internal to your company conflict of interest, but certainly perception and reputationally, I think it looks terrible. But maybe we're to the point, Kristy, where if you move to a CEO position at someone like Intel, you can't have stock in companies that are under U.S. trade sanctions. And maybe that's something we need to look at. So I didn't think Trump was too far off to call that out. I thought it was too far off to say he should be fired. But, and we have talked about in this podcast, literally the whole time we've had the podcast, I've seen not the role of the CEO evolve, but what is public and private for a CEO. And of course, Coldplay is on front of everyone's mind, and the Coldplay concert, and what's public and what's private. And I think we're moving to a point where everything's public with a CEO, and whether it is who they're seeing, who they're in a relationship with, who they own, what company do they own stock in, do they beat their dogs? I mean, I think that is all something that now the public is going to be, I don't want to say interested in, but it's going to be a part of what the CEO brings to the table. And that means companies have to look at those sorts of things. And I don't want to suggest you have to be, cleaner than clean, because none of us are. But if you have a clear, in my mind, conflict, you may need to resolve that conflict. And if you're engaging in behavior that you could do before, you may have to stop that behavior now. So the Coldplay and a lot of the commentary around that, particularly, I guess it was more than even the commentary, even the event itself, the commentary around it of what are we requiring our CEOs to stand up to, I'm afraid it's everything.
That's really interesting, Tom. When I read the article that you based this conversation on, what interested me about it was the clear infighting between board members and the CEO about the direction that they're supposed to go, whether they're going to stay in manufacturing of the chips, etc. Those are huge decisions that the public and the Wall Street Journal know are disagreements within the board and the C-suite. I mean, what do you think about that? If you, using this one maybe not specifically, but as a case study, when the board and the CEO really diverge on which direction you're going, that's a problem, don't you think?
It is, and that part of the article, I don't want to say it concerned me less, Kristy, because I've seen that play out, and I think that's probably, we've seen that play out for a long, long time. And for a company like Intel, I have to say this because it still stuns me. I wrote a blog today about the end of AOL dial-up. Yes.
Oh, right. Yes.
Dial-up is gone. But
how did it take this long? Okay. Yeah.
Who knew dial-up still existed? I wonder what my daughter thinks dial-up is. But remember, every computer you bought in the 90s, the first thing you look for, Intel inside.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how ubiquitous Intel was. And they were literally the world's leader. And they're no longer that. And
I have it here. It says Intel inside on my laptop right now.
There we go. Still a thing. So it's not exactly Kodak, but it's clearly the direction of the company is something that is very significant to its continued survival. And the discussions they're having, whether they're elevated to disagreements / fights or not, I think is where Intel is and how they let themselves get in this position.
Okay, well, let's talk about a different crisis. And this one comes from Corporate Compliance Insights, and it is an article titled, "A Shadow AI Crisis is Brewing in the GC's Office." GC, of course, is General Counsel, for anyone who may not know all the acronyms we use around here. So this one starts out by coining a brand new acronym, because that's exactly what we need here in legal and compliance. And the author speaks of BYOLLM, meaning bring your own large language model, which of course relates to AI. So their new data is in, and it is pretty freaking alarming. So the article cites a survey commissioned by Axiom Law that involved 300 in-house counsel at companies with revenues of at least 50 million. So relatively large to huge companies. And it found that 83% of legal teams are using AI tools that were not provided by their company. and 81% acknowledge using tools that have not been formally approved. Okay, I don't know how that 2% is getting in there, but whatever. What made me most nervous was that 46% of the folks without AI training are using these legal tools to draft contracts. Okay. So the article goes on to imagine some pretty scary scenarios where company commercial strategies, trade secrets, and financials all become part of a public large language model. But the most frightening hypothetical to me was the idea that if an attorney-client privilege documents were uploaded into an LLM, and then the LLM uses those documents in a public way, are they now public, right? And if they are public, was privilege waived over these documents? So, yeah, theoretical, but it's definitely things that make you go, So, Tom, if 83% of the in-house lawyers surveyed are using AI tools not approved by their company, which is the shadow AI threat that the author's talking of, this is a pretty astronomical risk. I mean, what did you think about this? I couldn't believe it was this high.
So let me go back to the Coldplay concert, because one of my favorite commentaries was, hey guys, people have affairs. The birds and the bees exist at adulthood as well as teenagers. Companies just need to button up, and that's just the way people are. Well, no, that's not quite that, because you can have a reasonable set of policies and procedures. And I think I've said on this podcast, I met my wife at work. And it was Halliburton, and of course they had a policy on it, and you had to disclose in writing to your immediate supervisor you were in a romantic relationship with another employee, and as long as you weren't in the same chain of command and you weren't at a certain level, it was okay. And I found that reasonable, and I was very comfortable disclosing it to him. Probably everybody knew anyway. So usually, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about this, except I'm overlaid. I grew up as a trial lawyer fighting over privilege in every lawsuit. And so I'm extraordinarily offended when lawyers self-violate the rules to protect privilege. And the second you put a privileged document in an LLM that's not ring-fenced with your own ring, you have waived privilege. And so I have zero tolerance for any lawyer who does that, any lawyer claiming they have privilege. And I don't know, I mean, I had to learn every rule, and Texas had these specific things you had to do. And, you had to stamp on it, privileged, and it had to be in a locked cabinet and all this stuff. And so we literally, that's what we did. But the rules have changed because technology has changed. And if you're going to put something the public can get, one, you've waived privilege. But to your point, what happens if you see it in a document that you then create or somebody else creates? And that is equally something to worry about. What the article drove home for me, Kristy, is we're back to that birds and bees argument. Everybody's going to do it, so
Yep.
Well, the reality is this is a fabulous tool, and LLMs can be a fabulous tool. Whereas you and I might not want to feel comfortable asking ChatGPT to write a contract. We may have enough on our form file that we feel like we can write a contract. And I do, if anybody needs any legal help. But if you ask them to write a contract, number one, you have to know what should go in that contract. So you have to edit it appropriately. But number two is even if you ask ChatGPT to do that, it should only be taken as a first draft.
Absolutely.
Just like any associate who's asked to draft a contract. We're not going to stop using those tools. The birds and the bees are going to happen. And so we better find a way to manage that risk. And that's where we're falling down. Because if you explain to a young associate, you can use ChatGPT, but if you put that document in there, you have now waived the privilege for us, and we now have to call our E&O carrier. And when you start having those conversations, people say, "Oh, I get it. If I'm going to use it, I've got to have a ring-fenced LLM that's going to give me the information I need to access, but it's not going to get out to the general public." So I'm beginning to think that the Coldplay situation may be the basis of my entire existence going forward.
Oh dear.
Uh,
That's a
but
little frightening, Tom. I'm not sure that's a
yeah,
good idea.
maybe not. Or maybe I should just go see Coldplay, who I've never seen. But I think it's a problem because the tool is so powerful, and not younger, everyone's going to use it. Whether you're a junior associate, junior partner, senior partner, the tool is too valuable not to use, and so you have to use it appropriately. And yes, I did kind of get on a high horse because legal privilege is extraordinarily important. That's what differentiates lawyers from civilians. We have privilege and they don't.
From the privileged group right here on Two Gurus Talk Compliance. I would agree we are privileged. Um, Gosh, why don't you talk this article you picked next, Tom? Seriously. All right, tell me about Uber.
This is just beyond belief. There's got to be a coterie of plaintiffs' lawyers who have not stopped salivating after they read this article.
Yeah.
And Pavlov's dogs live because plaintiff lawyers salivate when they read something like this. And what happened, Kristy, was Uber had a sexual, not harassment, they had a problem with sexual attacks of drivers on female passengers. And so they studied the problem from a safety perspective, and the team came up with multiple things that could be done to put in place. And Uber decided they weren't going to do them. And the reason they weren't going to do them because, number one, Uber didn't want to be the police, and two, they thought it would hurt business. Well, can you imagine the final argument a plaintiff's lawyer is going to put on when he starts arguing for punitive damages and starts waving that report around, saying not only did they know, not only did they come up with a plan to stop it, they chose not to so they could make more money. So when I say plaintiff's lawyer salivating, I can see billions being paid out over this. And we haven't even discussed the human cost because it's a real thing. It was so bad Uber studied it and came up with a plan to mitigate and then remediate. And I don't want to play down the human cost because it's horrible. And women being attacked anytime is horrible. And Uber had a problem with that. And they came up with a proposed solution and rejected the solution for a business reason.
I mean, this article, first of all, the article's from the New York Times, and it is long and brilliantly written. It's so gripping. And it is extremely uncomfortable. I mean, I'm in Houston right now, Tom. We're in the same time zone, unusually, and basically the same county, I think. And I've
5 hours away.
5 hours away. Well, that's why we're not recording live. But look, I was in an Uber 3 times in the last 24 hours, right? And there are so many drivers. I can understand to a certain degree their challenges, but they've figured out algorithmically which are likely to be problematic drives. It's kind of horrifying to imagine that one of them that I'm in qualifies, right? But I liked some of their solutions. I mean, one of them that they deployed in Saudi Arabia was to have women drivers and women passengers be able to essentially request each other.
Yes.
And they found that to be very effective in Saudi Arabia. And the other one was the installing of cameras in all of the Ubers so that there could be recording of the rides. And I understand both the argument for privacy there and their concerns, which I'm not sure how well I like this, but the idea that the contractors can't be told to put cameras in them for safety reasons. I don't know about that, but I do like the idea of being able to select one that has chosen to do that, because that would make me feel significantly better that that person was much less likely, I suppose, to end up in the situation if they know they're being recorded for all of their drives. So I do think that Uber has a way out and a plan to make and an ability to make this better. And we're going to see what happens. All right, let's go to a company that solved its problems, at least a little bit. I love this article. It was from Fast Company. It's written by a company founder who has seen the error of his ways and seen the light. It's titled, "I Built a Company That Broke People. Now I'm choosing capitalism with love. Okay. So the founder talks fondly of an executive he calls Joe. And the founder wrote in the opening, "It took 48 months to transform a brilliant human into someone else," unquote. So basically, what happened is that Joe have had extreme burnout. And the author seems very sincere and self-reflective about the contribution that he had to that. So Executive Joe's continuous overwork cost him his marriage, and the founder's constant pushing lost his best employee. So the founder quantified what he lost. Replacing Joe took a team of people because Joe was doing so much work, which cost 1.2 million. They lost the team cohesion, which was estimated at a loss of 800,000. 3 other people departed, another 500,000 on that list, and 2.5 million in quantifiable year 1 losses. That's a huge number, and it doesn't even count what happened to the culture watching this superstar leave. So how did this affect the CEO himself? Well, the founder changed his ways, and ever since then, he told the story of how he won't invest in companies where people are in burnout and chaos, that even if it's financially intelligent, he's not going to invest in that because it's not going to work for him. And that lesson has stuck. So I just thought this was great, Tom. I thought the first person nature and the self-reflection were incredible. What struck you when you were reading it?
Well, I rarely try to presuppose your past experience, but I'm going to right now.
Okay.
You grew up in big law, and I grew up in big law.
Uh-huh.
And big law is hard driven, very dynamic, very driven individuals, both at the partner and associate level.
Mm-hmm.
And I work for some really difficult people, and really difficult people. And this was just the culture of the law firm, or it was the people I gravitated towards, or the fact I was a trial lawyer and we're all jerks. I don't know what. But so I grew up in that environment, and in large part, the success I've had is because those people were so hard on me, and it made me better as a lawyer. Now, a corporate culture can be toxic. And what I really appreciated about this article was not the Damascene moment where the scales fell from his eyes, but it was the financial calculation he made of the cost to he and his company, and that this cost was literally millions of dollars, and probably more down the road as well. And so companies don't think about that. And we don't have it on our list this week, but the CEO of AT&T released a 2,500-word memo where he said specifically, our values now will be performance-based. Not the values of doing business ethically and in compliance, not values of integrity, not values of psychological safety, business performance-based. And once you start down that road where all you're graded on is how much business did you do, people will get the message. And everything else will become second nature. And you'll have an Enron, or you'll have a WorldCom, or you'll have any of, you name the scandal, you have a Boeing, whatever the scandal is, because the values are simply get it done. And so I look at this and I struggle between what I grew up with, completely understanding that was toxic, but also knowing that we seem to be evolving back to that. And this is AT&T, not, some little regional phone carrier. This is the big AT&T, and that's what they're going to do. And they're going to write that into their value statement. And what's that going to mean for compliance and ethics? What's it going to mean for the values of your company? What does it mean for the people? If your only performance metric is, did you make the sales? And if you didn't, sorry, you're fired. What is that? What's the cost of that? And the circle back to the article, well, now we have a quantifiable cost. And I guess the other thing that I think about in all of this is the generations at work. You and I grew up in a different generation. I grew up in a different generation than you. My daughter is in a completely different generation, and she has a different set of values that you and I have. And what does all of that mean for her generation of millennial or Gen Z, or not Gen Z? And so I don't pretend to know the answer, but I do know toxicity when I see it, and now we have it quantified. And that's what I really appreciated about this article. I guess this should be Tom on his Highhorse episode.
I can hardly wait for that title because I can see it. I can see it. Are you going to get on your high horse about the Ninth Circuit as well?
Well, except probably from the direction you're not expecting.
Okay. I wasn't sure where you're going with this. I literally have this I don't know what to say. Tom, I'm going to listen to what you have to say about this and then riff on it. What do you see?
So for those who've ever read an SEC order which settles a case, there's a trade-off. And that trade-off is not the fine and penalty. It's not getting the SEC over your back, although that's of some import. It is that neither admit nor deny. So you get an order that says, we were bad, but we don't have to admit or deny anything, and no one can ever use this against us. To get that, you have to promise not to say anything bad about the SEC. That's called a gag, and a gag rule that the SEC has for no admit or deny settlements. And I think that is completely appropriate. If you're going to not have to admit or deny anything, you're going to have to give something up. And it's not giving up the money because that's a fine and penalty. So I think the Ninth Circuit was right. It drives me crazy when people say, I can't say anything bad about my settlement where I didn't admit I didn't do anything. The hell you didn't, you know? So I just drives me crazy when people want to badmouth their settlement when they've gotten as good as it gets. So that's where I shake it on that.
All right. I was a little bit surprised that the Ninth Circuit went the way that they did. I thought they might be in the free speech, because that's the argument, right? It's a free speech violation, but the Ninth Circuit disagreed. So there we go. It's going to stay in place. It's been in place since 1972. I learned that from your article. There we go. All right, let's move over to Europe. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So next up is the world ready for yet another EU regulation dealing with life in the workplace? Signs point to yes. So the article that I chose comes from the Global Compliance News, and it focuses on the Committee on Employment and Social Affairs of the European Parliament. That group made a recommendation for a new law. Now, let's be very clear. It's a recommendation. This is not something that's in draft format yet. However, this new regulation, should it come to pass, would regulate algorithmic management in the workplace. So what does that mean? Well, it's a catch-all for basically everything that electronically monitors workers and their work, or that makes decisions about them electronically. But wait, you say, aren't there already laws about that stuff? And yes, there are. For instance, the European General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, and the EU AI Act. Well, these laws are piecemeal in their rights and remedies. So this legislation would require employee notice and consultation for the deployment of algorithmic and AI-based tools. It also would require human input for reviewing of critical work decisions like hiring, firing, and compensation. So companies would need a vast compliance structure if the law is prevented as is. According to Global Compliance News, that would include auditing, monitoring, training, policies, and governance. So Tom, I mean, this is super early, but I could see a law like this taking force in the EU. Now, the argument, on the other hand, is that the omnibus bill has come in, and 2 out of the 3 European bodies have said we need to water down this corporate sustainability and the corporate sustainability due diligence regulation. We need to make it easier and less cumbersome. This would be bigger, not smaller. So what does your crystal ball say, Tom? Does this one make it through the EU?
Well, not only does it make it through the EU, Kristy, this is actually something the CCPA has addressed. And the CCPA, I've just pulled up the article, has AI regulations.
Okay, California, go ahead. The California Consumer Privacy Act, yes? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Our algorithmic, our acronyms are out of control again, Tom. Go ahead.
It has AI regs for automated decision-making tech. So this is something that is going to come to the United States. When I first read your article, my first thought was kind of as you suggested, oh, here we go with crazy Europeans again. But then I saw, after you sent me this article, this one about the addition to the California Consumer Protection Act. So I think it's something that we're going to see a little bit more of. And as usual, California leads the United States in looking at this issues, as Europe tends to lead the rest of the world. So I think it's coming, and I think it's something that companies are going to have to be cognizant of going forward.
I mean, look, I think that companies need to be very straightforward about if they're monitoring every keystroke, which some of the law firms do, then they need to be telling people that's what's happening. So, I mean, I think from a disclosure and transparency culture perspective, it's absolutely critical, but it'd be interesting to see if Tom's crystal ball is right. We're going to be keeping track of that and whether Sam Bankman-Fried gets pardoned in the next several months. But let's go to crypto. What do you think, Tom? What else did you pick here?
So I picked an article, and I'm going to pull it up because, first of all, it's Matt Levine. And I know you don't subscribe to Bloomberg, but Matt Levine, in my mind, is the best business columnist in America, even better than Andrew Ross Sorkin on the New York Times Steelbook. And he writes long, detailed articles. And this one was about the regulation of crypto. And I want to pull it up because it actually started at the beginning and kind of walked through the discussion around what crypto is and how or should it be regulated. And he started out by saying, which I think is completely correct, is crypto a currency or is it an investment? So you might buy Bitcoin because it's a useful form of digital cash, recognizing that there are more convenient ways to pay for things. But you might buy Bitcoin because you think other people will find it useful and you want to invest in it. And so under U.S. securities law, we've had the dichotomy that tokens, i.e. Bitcoin, are not securities. They're currency. And then you have number two, tokens are securities. And he goes down to talk about these different philosophical positions and how that has led or not led to where we are currently with crypto legislation and regulation. And so, first of all, I want everyone to read Matt Levine. Second of all, if you're not going to read anything else about Matt Levine, this is a great primer on regulation of crypto. What is crypto? I have zero difficulty understanding crypto as currency. If you want to use it, fine. I tend to be, as the prior SEC head was, that, however, if you're going to invest in crypto or a crypto is going to allow you to invest, that's a security and it needs to fall under securities regulation. But to me, it was just the perfect way to explain all of that in a way that I thought was straightforward for the business professional.
Now, I first of all, let me clear the air. I do not have a problem with Bloomberg. I just haven't yet subscribed to it. And you're right. This article was absolutely fascinating. I was actually quite proud of myself for being able to follow all the words because it's very complicated in what it's talking about. And you have to be pretty in the weeds to know what all of it's doing. But, I thought it was so well written, and it really lays out the problem of, is this thing a security? Is this thing cash? Is this thing, where should we be regulating it? And the fact is, in the last administration, it was very clear that they wanted to regulate crypto as a security and have all the SEC rules around it. And the author comes down to this sort of 1, 2, 3 options. One being that it's a security regulated SEC, it's unregulated, leave it alone, or 3, semi-regulated, so that when it's, essentially it's an initial offering, right? When tokens are being used to raise capital, that there should be some sorts of disclosure in the way that is required for other types of capital purchases by people who aren't in the company. So, I mean, I think option 3 is probably right, but mostly a pipe dream. Tom, your crystal ball is getting a lot of work today. Which one do you think is going to be the outcome?
I think we're going to have very, 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 very light touch. And that some of the protections that have been put in place, I think, will ameliorate some of the Wild West we saw in the late part of the last decade and early part of this century, where people were just getting ripped off left and right. And just recognize it's an investment that can be based on nothing. So if I say Foxcoin at $1, is tagged to the US dollar and that's the value and I don't back it up, what's the value of that? What I say it is, nothing more. And you've got no recourse if it fails. So I don't invest in crypto and I don't use crypto as currency. A good old greenback is good enough for me.
Well, Tom, I think you're a stable coin, so congratulations for that. All righty, we've been all around this crazy world. Shall we wrap up this party in Florida?
Yes.
All right. This time, our Florida man is Tehran Alexander, and boy, does he enjoy flying the friendly skies. So we all know that travel can be prohibitively expensive, but that did not stop Mr. Alexander from winging it into the sunset. See, he found a loophole. It turns out that there is a special website where flight attendants and pilots can book travel for free on other carriers. So for 6 whole years, Mr. Anderson used fake credentials to book. So he had 30 different aliases over time, including fake badge numbers and hire dates. And over the time that he was pulling this scheme, he claimed to work at 7 different airlines, which is really more aliases than his frequent flyer miles. But things got turbulent for Mr. Alexander when the feds caught wind of his scheme. His travel plans were grounded when he was arrested and convicted of wire fraud and entering a secure area of an airport by false pretenses. It turns out, Tom, that there's no exit row from his final destination of prison.
Frank Abagnale, where are you?
He'll never tell you. I'm Kristy Grant-Hart. Thanks for joining us today.